93-year-old Robert Mugabe has ruled Zimbabwe since the country's liberation 37 years ago. But now the military has seized control. CBS News foreign correspondent Deborah Patta is tracking the crisis from Johannesburg.
It looked like a coup as tanks rolled into the nation's capital overnight.
Military police and a tank. Wow, it's real.
And soldiers took over the state broadcaster. But Zimbabwean General Moyo denied it.
We wish to make it abundantly clear that this is not a military takeover.
Instead, Robert Mugabe, who has ruled Zimbabwe by fear for 37 years, is now under house arrest. 93 years old and in failing health, he is regarded by his critics as a brutal tyrant who ran the country into the ground. He's perhaps best remembered for sending out bands of thugs who seized white-owned farms, drove off owners, killed livestock, and then left the land fallow. The economy went into freefall, unemployment soared, the Zimbabwean dollar was printed in denominations of billions. Despite this, Mugabe's grip on power only strengthened. But ultimately, it may have been his wife, Grace, nearly half his age, who was his undoing when he tried to position her as his potential successor. Known as Gucci Grace for her lavish shopping sprees and flamboyant fashion choices, she was Mugabe's secretary before entering politics 2 years ago. Now, her husband is in the military's custody. Power, finally, may be slipping from Mugabe's hands. No one knows where Grace Mugabe is. There are rumors she's already fled the country. And with Robert Mugabe under house arrest, Zimbabweans are waiting to see if he will step down. Roxana?
Todd Moss is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. He's now a senior fellow at the Center for Global Development. Todd, Robert Mugabe has led Zimbabwe for the entirety of its 37-year existence. Can you give us some background into his rule and what led the country to this point?
Well, Robert Mugabe led a liberation war against Rhodesian white rule and brought the country to independence in 1980. I lived in Zimbabwe in some of the earlier years of Mugabe's time in office, and it was really a thriving economy, really a country on the up. They were exporting food, had mining, agriculture, and really as Mugabe over time has become more and more of a dictator, the politics have gotten very constrained, and the economy has been destroyed by Robert Mugabe and his cronies.
So how popular is he now?
Well, I think among the common person, he's not very popular, but they've got a very elaborate system of intimidation. The party that Mugabe is head of has structures in all of the villages and all of the neighborhoods, and they keep a pretty tight lid on people's activities. You don't want to be a political activist in Zimbabwe.
Some people think Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa should succeed Mugabe, but others believe the president's wife, Grace, should. Tell us a little bit about these two camps.
Well, the president is 93 years old, so the issue of who comes next is always a hot political topic. Within Mugabe's inner circle, there were really two camps, the First Lady, Grace Mugabe, and the Vice President, Emmerson Mnangagwa, and they'd been kind of jostling. Now, Grace, of course, is the president's wife. She's got some of the younger party members, some of the firebrand. Emmerson Mnangagwa is a longtime ally of President Mugabe, very, very tight with the military chiefs, and in particular with General Chiwenga. And what we've seen is that competition finally came to a head about a week ago when Mugabe fired Mnangagwa in a very public and humiliating fashion, and Mnangagwa had to flee the country for his life. And we're now seeing the military step in. That is the blowback from this palace battle.
Now, you say the military is stepping in. The military insists this is not a coup, is it?
Well, when coups happen, there's always a lot of misinformation, a lot of confusion. Look, the president is under house arrest. The army controls the television station. They control the airport. They're rounding up allies of the First Lady. Several of them have been arrested. This absolutely looks like the classic signs of a coup. It absolutely is a coup.
And this wouldn't be General Chiwenga's first time stepping in. When Mugabe lost the election in 2008, he actually insisted Mugabe should stay. Why the change of heart?
Well, I think it came to a head between these two factions. You know, there's a group of older military men that feel that they should rule Zimbabwe forever. There was a younger group that was getting behind the president, and then there's really the behind the First Lady. Then there's really the majority of the population which thinks that a future Zimbabwe should not be determined by one family, that it actually should be determined by the population as a whole. And fortunately for Zimbabwe, it's an incredibly vibrant, capable society. There are lots of young, capable leaders who could step forward to lead that country into the future. And I'm hopeful that once all of this smoke clears from the coup, that we'll see Zimbabwe have some kind of transitional authority that will lead to free and fair elections next year, and that the country can begin to heal.
And for now, with Mugabe under house arrest, who's in charge?
Well, you know, we don't really know, but it's presumably General Chiwenga. At some point, we would assume that Emmerson Mnangagwa will return to the country. He will probably try to paint himself as the savior, that he's going to come back and restore democracy and fight corruption. But we should remember that Emmerson Mnangagwa is a longtime security chief for Robert Mugabe. He was the architect of a massacre of at least 20,000 civilians in the southern part of the country in the 1980s. He's been implicated in millions and millions of dollars stolen in diamond revenues. So this is not a man who is going to be able to lead Zimbabwe into a better future. He really represents the past.
And we have, as you know, Todd, the U.S. has placed sanctions on Zimbabwe, so I'm sure it has a great deal of interest in seeing what happens next. Todd Moss, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.